Alright, hello everyone. This is Simon, your host for the Modern Awakened Perspective, your map for the path to enlightenment. And this will be my second video, the actual first installment here of the 4 different subjects which I will normally be talking about. This one is going to be focused on government and politics. And let me go ahead and get right into it. Again, I'll be reading from the paper because I wrote this ahead of time so that I can make sure that I really get my point across. And in the future, I'll do more, just freestyle or whatever. I'll just be talking about current events. But for now, this is pre-written. So here we go. Again, this is on the subject of government and politics. Before I woke up, I didn't pay much attention to the political landscape at all. In fact, I had never voted for anything or for anyone. Now, I'm starting with this subject of politics because this is where my dive down the rabbit hole got serious. I saw a video of a journalist making a live broadcast about 911 and the collapse of the Twin Towers. Now, as she was doing this report, she was standing in front of a window talking about the collapse of Building 7, or the Solomon Brothers building, which is located in the World Trade Center complex. She was unfamiliar with the building, evidently, because she had said it had already collapsed, but it was still standing. And this was a live broadcast. And once they realized the error, they cut her off right in the middle of her broadcast. Now, as we know, that building later fell with a controlled implosion, even though it was never hit by an airplane. And so to explain this, they formed a special investigation or a commission to explain why and how it had collapsed. The commission later came out with the most bogus explanation, saying that there was some sort of an event that made no sense, and that this type of the reason it fell could never be recreated, basically. It also never happened any time in the past and has never been seen since. Now, I've always been a logical and rational thinker, so this just didn't really sit well with me. Waking up is a process, and at some point you realize that you've been lied to, and that was pretty much the beginning, or the biggest slap in my face to show that what they say is definitely not always true. Now, after understanding that they lied about something so significant, it's only natural to wonder what else they've been lying to us about. When I first woke up and started down my path, I would say that I was thirstier for knowledge than I could ever been for water. So I had to go reassess almost everything that I thought I'd known, and that I learned, basically. I had to relearn everything. Now, at the time, I had just severely broken my leg playing basketball, and so I had plenty of time on my hands to do this kind of research. The powers that be say that we are too stupid to handle our own affairs and to think for ourselves, yet they do everything in their power to keep us dumbed down. That tells me that they are truly afraid of our collective power, and that they will do everything they can to keep themselves and their families in control. At some point, it became evident that my third eye, or my pineal gland, had opened, hence my need to reassess everything I thought I'd known. In my research, I discovered that they put fluoride in our water to keep our pineal glands calcified. They know that if enough people wake up, it will threaten their positions of power. Especially since we outnumber them, and if we wake up, they're screwed. Now, I've read that fluoride, they say is, which is good for our health or for our teeth, is actually a byproduct of the steel industry and is actually a poison. A while ago, I remember reading a book by Kevin Trudeau. It was called Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About. In that book, he confronted some some corporate guy who was pretty high up in the ladder, and finally got him to admit that it was a poison. And he challenged the guy to drink a glass of fluoride, and he wanted no part of it. And you know why? It's not good for us. Another event that sent me deeper down that rabbit hole was the death of the journalist Tim Russert. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with him. I know most people that are into this material may have already be familiar with the events I'm going to refer to, but these are the things that got me going down my path, so that's why I mention these, okay? Tim Russert, he had interviewed George W. Bush and John Kerry, and had confronted both of them about being members of the Skull and Bones Secret Society. Now, being an empath, I have a pretty good feel with people when they're telling the truth because of their facial expressions and their emotions. People have not just an IQ but an EQ, like an emotional quotient, and evidently mine's pretty high because I have a pretty good feel for when people are straight shooters or when they're bullshitting. So as being an empath, I could see and read the looks on their faces that they were highly upset with that line of questioning, and it wasn't long after those interviews that he was found dead, showing the kind of power that these people have. Now that led me to the understanding that the mainstream media and most everything, which is owned and controlled by just a few conglomerates, is really pushing their own agenda, pushing out propaganda. Now, thank God for YouTube and social media, as that is the only way to get information that is not propaganda, fueling the deep state's hidden agenda. The elite that controls most everything, from newspapers to radio to TV to internet companies, don't want the general public exposed to information that doesn't come from their sources. One of these rich and powerful people I next learned about is George Soros, which I'm sure, again, if you're into this kind of content, you know who he is and what he's about. I remember seeing an interview with him on 60 Minutes where he cold-heartedly told of killing his own people to acquire wealth and status. The reporter asked him if that was difficult, and he openly said he rather enjoyed it. And again, the look on his face was very telling. It later came to my attention that he is a central figure behind the New World Order agenda. He has funded many movements designed to destroy countries with open border policies and other practices used to keep the public from becoming unified. These people know that as a collective, we can easily drive them from their positions of power and keep them from fulfilling their agendas. Now, this guy Soros is behind groups like the Black Lives Matter, the women's marches and rallies, and many other tactics, all the way up to the current migrant situation at the southern border. So this shows you the lengths that these people will go to divide and conquer, to keep us from becoming as powerful as we can be as a collective. The next big subject that I want to address is President Obama and his falsified history and birth certificate. This is one of the next big things that I encountered down my dive down the rabbit hole. Now, I'm not a technological expert, but it became clear through his Hawaiian birth certificate that it had been fabricated when many experts showed it had been sloppily pieced together from other documents. Not long after that news had surfaced, the lady who was in charge of that service in the state of Hawaii during that time that his birth certificate had supposedly been issued, died in an unexplained airplane crash. People may want to call me a conspiracy theorist, but I know logically that these type of coincidences are mathematically impossible. Especially when you have so many, it makes it painfully obvious that there is something being covered up. Again, once you know that they lie to push an agenda, it makes it easier to see what they are up to. Even the well-respected Sheriff Joe Arpaio of the infamous Tent City prison out in the heat of Arizona investigated Obama's birth certificate to try to disprove that it was forged. But he also came to the same conclusion because the facts don't lie. Clearly, there was something going on that didn't make sense. If you noticed, it wasn't long after he spoke up that they tried to throw him under the bus. And I believe it was Trump that actually pardoned him not too long ago, which is good. I really was behind that because, you know, he's a well-respected person and he wouldn't lie or didn't have his own agenda to push. I also, staying on the subject of Obama and his falsified resume, I also had seen video of a man named Larry Sinclair giving testimony under oath about Obama and him having sexual encounters in Chicago while he was still a senator. Now, he communicated with a man, I think his name was Donald Young, and who acted as a messenger between the two while Obama was on the campaign trail. That go-between was a fellow member of a church Obama had attended and also a member of the bathhouse that Obama attended in Chicago. Shortly after these communications, that man died mysteriously as well. The next step along the Obama trail takes me to Michelle Obama, or as some would call her, Michael. There are many videos on the internet addressing this subject, and a lot of people I've talked to have tried to say that they are fake or whatever, but there's really no reason for people to fake these kind of videos. And when you dig deeper, even though this information is sensitive, it's definitely there for you to see. Okay? There are videos of Obama himself calling her Michael, and in several instances. One was during a live speech in front of generals and heads of state. The other one that I'm aware of was during his appearance on the Bear Grylls show. I've also got links to all the videos and things that I mentioned in the description of my video, so to make these things easy to see, and if you haven't heard of them, you can go right to them and verify what I'm saying. Now, you know, everyone's going to have different information which resonates with them, but this is, you know, the stuff that really got my eyes to open. Now, all these things add up to something sinister, in my opinion, and it cannot be easily ignored or explained away. As one of my influencers and mentors, Cliff High, has said, anyone can try to write these events off, but really, you can't ignore those type of coincidences, and he calls, you know, those kind of people coincidence theorists. I love that expression. In my opinion, your third eye, your pineal gland, is like Pandora's box, because once it's open, once your eyes are open, it's impossible to go back and see the world as you had before. There are many more stories and events that just don't add up and are clearly not what they lead us to believe they are. Now, just to name a few of the events or false flags people may be interested in researching or looking into are Sandy Hook, Parkland, the Orlando Pulse nightclub, and Las Vegas mass shootings, the Boston Marathon, etc. I would suggest looking into the murder of Seth Rich, also the DNC email leaker. Now, the further you go down the rabbit hole, the more you'll find evil and satanic subjects, such as Pizzagate and Frazzle Drip. Now, I won't go into detail on these. I'll leave that up to the individual to decide if that's something they want to look into or investigate. But be advised, those subjects are pretty extreme, so you want to look those up at your own risk. Okay? Be advised, they're only for the most strong-minded and for those that don't have a weak stomach. Besides, I'm just starting my YouTube channel, and I really don't want to start off on the wrong foot with YouTube and Google. As we know, they do shadow banning and just take channels off give them strikes or whatever for no reason, just because they don't like our message. So I don't want to